Yo, Crimson, what's up? All right, we are getting started a little bit early. Gonna let the OmniLucid folks join in soon. And go ahead and everybody. I'm starting the event just a bit early. Swing by and hang out. Boom, boom, boom. Great. All right, so the big question of the day is the chat working correctly? Which we will find out as soon as someone chats. So let's see. So I see Crimson. Crimson, you're in here, yeah? How's it going? How are you doing? We are I'm looking forward to this one. This one's gonna be a good one. Like just between you and me. It's gonna hopefully change like how everyone does. Oh yes, perfect. Great. Love it. Beep boop. Okay, so that seems to be working nicely. I'll give it a few more minutes. See who trickles in, and we will get started at 8. As always, everything's getting as always, everything's getting recorded so that Koi can, go over it, make it into something usable. I do not have editing skills or time, so I can't do that myself, sadly. But thankfully, Koi's been like super awesome and helping me out with that. Let's maybe he'll show up. Oh no. We're probably gonna get started at around 8 o'clock, 8:05. Yeah. You got any tunes going? Anything you're listening to right now? Alright, if not, I don't have anything going over on my side. At some point I'd like to have music going in the stream, but that might take a minute. Audio okay? Check. 1, 2, 3, 4. Shut the door. 5, 6. Alright. I did some testing. It should be fine, but something could be going wrong. In the meantime, we are going stuff. So video's good. Glad to hear it. All right. Two minutes to showtime. So, hello. How's it going? Good to see you, Bug Milk. We are gonna get started in a few minutes here. Figured I'd start things early, make sure things were working, because this is I'm using the Streamlabs OBS thing instead of just OBS, so I had to like reset up everything. But it seems like it's working nicely. You can actually read the chat now, whereas before it was like very Very questionable content, like quality. Okay. We got about a minute and I will probably get started. You guys will get to benefit from like everything I'm going to be going over today. And if it's just you guys, that's fine. There's going to be some secret sauce tonight. Let me tell you what. Oh, hello. How's it going? It field you? I don't know how to pronounce it. It's field you. It feel you? I'm so bad at. Okay, 8 o'clock. You know what that means? Time to get started. Yeah, secret sauce. We're about to open up this can of secret sauce, pour it out all over, see how it tastes, just straight off the table. Feel you. I like that. Feel you. Something like that. Feel you. Feel you. Something. Oh, what's the country of origin? Okay, so the latest we're going to get started is 8:05, but I'm hoping to get started a little bit before that. Let's see. You know what? Screw 'em. You guys are here. Let's make this happen. All right, so today I'm going to be teaching you guys how to get good at lucid dreaming. So what that means is, or rather what that looks like is like teaching you guys what practice is, what good practice looks like, and showing you kind of the steps that I took to get to the point where I'm at, not just with lucid dreaming, but with like a bunch of other skills. So we're going to kind of go over the what good practice is, which is a structured, systematic thing. It's a process. You're following a procedure in order to develop a skill as efficiently as you can. Or in other words, you're just like doing a how-to step-by-step thing like really well. Usually one that you write yourself for yourself. So there's best practices for every kind of skill out there. So the ones I have the most experience with are obviously lucid dreaming, chess, violin, and Super Smash Brothers. You're going to find very common things between all of these, and we're going to go over a handful of them. So the ones we're going to be going over that have the most importance for like lucid dreaming are goals, drills, performance, and review. So I'm going to be going over each one of these in turn, giving you examples and kind of explaining the importance of each one. And then I'm going to be going over practical examples for both dialed and wild. In this way, I'm hoping that you guys can develop your own practice and make it as like efficient as possible so that you're learning as quickly as possible to be like as good as possible at this whole lucid dream thing. So by the end of this, you know, we're going to get you to the point where you can effectively know what your plan is, how to execute your plan, and how to improve upon your plan. So, hi, how's it going, Maichu? So let's get started. We're going to have time for questions in between each section. So before we start, does anyone have a question right now? And yes, this is basically going to be like a lecture, for better or worse. All right, if there are no questions, then we are going to go ahead and start with goals. Yes, Panzer, get your notebook out, take some notes. This is a lecture. You will be graded. Everything is on the test. Everything, all the things. There is nothing that is not on the test. Nothing at all. All right. Goals. Goals are going to help you define the depth and intensity of your practice. So to illustrate that point, there's a really, really big difference between trying to win a local Smash tournament and trying to win a national Smash tournament or an international Smash tournament. So yeah, there's a test, Maichu. I'm going to be quizzing all of you on this. It will count towards your final grade, or about like 50% of your final grade. Sorry in advance, I am a very harsh grader. So yeah, goals. They're going to help you set the depth and intensity of your practice, which basically means it's going to inform how much you practice, how you practice, and what you're practicing. You're going to want to pick a very realistic goal to start with. You don't want to start with, oh, I'm going to be OmniLucid, because that's just a surefire way to demotivate you. Because if you're trying to have a dream in every single one, if you're trying to have a lucid dream, if you are trying to have a lucid dream in all of your dreams, right off the bat, when you haven't even had a single lucid dream, that's a surefire way of, demotivating you and ensuring that you don't reach your goal, because you're going to quit long before you even get close to it, even if you are making progress. So instead, you're going to want to pick a more realistic goal. So let's say, for instance, using the Smash example, you are continually going 0-2 at tournaments. In other words, you are losing 2 games and getting knocked out of bracket without winning any game. Your goal should be to win 1 game. Just like when lucid dreaming, your goal should probably be to have 1 lucid dream before you move on to bigger and better things. So step 1, score the point, as Sensei would say. All right, so do we have any questions about goals? Like any kind of specific kind of questions regarding goals before we move on? You can have goals related to anything like dream control. Any short-term goals are great. You can be as specific as you want with goals. You can be like, I want to fly in my next lucid dream, or I want to remember my goals in a lucid dream. That's a goal. That's something to work towards, and that'll inform kind of what you're putting your focus on. If there are no questions, we'll move right along. Got lots more to cover. The next area I want to focus on in terms of good practice is drills. So we're going to be talking about drills. Those are exercises meant to improve specific things. So when you set a goal, you are letting yourself know what you want to work on and improve, and then you develop a drill to help you improve that thing. So for instance, when you're playing an instrument, you're often going to have etudes, which are smaller pieces designed to help you hone in on a specific skill or technique. Similarly in Smash, people do something called an Iron Man challenge, which, while not traditionally considered a drill, it ends up teaching you a lot about various characters' strengths and weaknesses, forces you to overcome those weaknesses, which forces you to learn those weaknesses so that you can then beat those characters. An Iron Man challenge is basically where you start with the first character in the roster, Mario, win with that character, and then go on to the next character. If you lose at any point, you reset back to Mario. It's kind of intensive, but it's a great way to, you know, learn the roster, which is a very important part of becoming better at that game. Similarly, you have chess and tactics. There's a bunch of puzzles you can do to kind of improve your awareness of the board, your ability to visualize, that sort of thing. So all of these things are meant to focus on specific things. So every Etude is going to be focusing on a specific thing. Iron Man challenges are going to teach you how to exploit weaknesses and overcome your own character's weaknesses, and just kind of understand the cast in general. And in chess, tactics are going to help you win games when you see a tactic. That's pretty much it as far as drills goes. It's not like a super hard concept. I'll go into a little bit more on specifics for drills for both dialed and wild a little bit later on. But do we have any questions or comments regarding drills at this time? Oh, we did have a question from Maichu. If you were to already had 10 to 20 lucids, what's a good goal? That's a good question. So if you already had like 10 to 20 lucids, a good goal at that point would be to work on another technique or skill, or potentially some sort of dream control related technique. We're going to go over how to pick goals later, because goals are going to continually evolve as you go. And a lot of the time the goals are going to be informed by your review. So you're going to be basically, we're going to talk about review in a bit, and I will relate that back to goals, just for you, Maichu. But yeah, it's kind of a vague sort of thing, because there might be a lot of different things that you need to work on, and you want to make it your goal to work on those things. But in order to do that, you have to identify what you need to work on. So basically, to answer your question, you need to identify what it is you're having a problem with, and then work on that thing. So maybe just identifying what you still have a problem with is a good goal when you're at that point. As far as good drills, again, we will go over that in a bit, specifically for wild and dialed. I just want to get, you know, everyone a handle on what the overall system of improvement looks like for all of these different skills. And part of that is our next little thing to focus on, rehearsal. So something that a lot of people don't understand about rehearsal is that it's very similar to performance. In fact, it is a performance, except you are actively trying to put the pieces together. You're trying to take the skills and the knowledge you learned during your drills and then apply them in a mock performance where there's not as much pressure. We're going to go over again what these look like in dialed and wild, so bear with me. But rehearsals are going to let you refine your game plan. You can try new things during rehearsal, see what works, what doesn't, and then you can collect data on what works and what doesn't by iterating and continuing to do what is essentially a faux performance. So what is a performance? Well, a performance is actually doing the thing. You're going to follow your game plan. So if you have like a step-by-step sort of thing that you're doing for like Smash, it's usually a matchup. So you're going to be, okay, at low percentage, I want to get a grab. And if like, let's say you're playing as like Pika, your general game plan is low percentage, get a grab, do some like lightning loops, and then, you know, make it work. That's your early game plan. that turns into other things later on, and that can vary depending on the matchups. But this is not a Super Smash Brothers video. This is a lucid dreaming video, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that. Yep. So that just kind of gives you an idea of what a game plan is in the context of lucid dreaming. A game plan is going to be like a technique, essentially. It's going to be, I'm going to perform this technique that I have been working on the skills. I have been basically training up the skills for this technique, and I'm going to do these things, and I'm going to do them good, real good, not bad. So when you're performing, you just want to trust that everything you've done so far is going to be on your side. Trust your drills, trust your rehearsal, and let them do the work for you. This is when you get to enjoy yourself. This is when you kind of get to let loose and see what happens. All right. So, do we have any specific questions on performance before we move on from here? Or rehearsal, for that matter. We will... I have played Smash in a lucid dream before. It's interesting. I used to use it for theory crafting. Not super successfully, but... All right, so if we have no questions, then I have no idea what the delay is like, so if we have no questions, then we're going to talk about review. This is arguably the most important part of getting better at anything, is review. Like in sports, in Smash, in any kind of physical thing, you're going to be able to review literal video or recordings of yourself or someone else, and you're going to be able to analyze those. So you can do that for both rehearsals, for practice, and for performances. So like if you're just doing some drills, you can record those and so on and so forth. Now this is one of the things where it starts to get a little bit harder for lucid dreaming, because you have to have excellent recall if you want to review what you're doing well, or you have to have excellent recall if you want to review. 10 to 20 seconds. Good to know. Okay. Yeah. So if you don't have good recall, review is going to be very difficult. You need to be able to you need to be able to recall what it is that you are doing, and then analyze what you're doing to see if you have any bad habits, or more importantly, any good habits, or more specifically, anything that you're doing that is working. So you're not just reviewing to see what you're doing wrong, you are reviewing to see what you're doing right. And when you're doing something right, you want to keep doing that, and you want to improve upon that. Whereas if you see that you're doing something wrong, you obviously want to try to break that habit, stop doing that thing. And that's where drills come into play. Drills can help train out bad habits and teach you good ones. So one other thing, I guess, for review is you can kind of look for missed opportunities. So to use, I guess, Smash as an example again, because it's what's on my mind right now, for no reason at all. When you're reviewing like one of your VODs, you can say, oh, there's a habit there that I didn't punish. This person like jumps in neutral a lot. I could have very easily punished that, put them in a disadvantaged state, really went to town. For lucid dreaming, as an example, you might be looking back at your reality checking practice. And when you do that, you're going to be wondering, oh, was I not quite as present and aware in this moment? Was I doing it by rote versus being active in the moment? that kind of thing. I'll stop here. Do we have any questions on like practice and improvement in general before we move on to lucid dreaming specifics? Not just like dream signs. That's an entirely different thing. That's a well, yeah. Dream signs would be part of review. Like identifying like commonalities in dreams would be a good example of review. Actually, yes. Now that I think about it. But it's not the only thing. There's a bunch of other things that you can get out of that process, but dream signs is definitely one thing that you can use. I don't personally find them super useful. I think there are better ways to go about improving that don't rely on specifics like that, more general things. Fundamentals-based practice, I guess, is the idea here, and you'll see all that in a second what I mean. But if that's it, I think we can move on to dialed. So we'll start with goals, and obviously you want to keep that realistic. So if you are, if you haven't started lucid dreaming at all, then your goal should be to have one lucid dream. When I started out, my goal was to have a lucid dream pretty much every night. I did not reach that goal, and it ended up with me taking a break way more than I should have. And that definitely hampered the amount of experience and learning and improvement I could have done if I had set more realistic goals for myself early on. So one of the big takeaways here I want you to do is to set realistic goals, whether that just be to work on recall, get your recall to the point where you can do review, that kind of thing. Your very first goal should really just be to have a lucid dream. That's very attainable, and you can just work on the various fundamentals of lucid dreaming to get to that point. Just do a number of drills for that. And speaking of drills, some of the things you can do to make that happen are just exercising criticality in your everyday life by questioning things like hold on, is that right? By kind of looking at the world in a way that is very skeptical. So if someone tells you something, don't take it at face value. Like even what I'm saying here, don't take it at face value. Get other sources, get other opinions, look up the science and the research, that kind of thing, and figure out, I guess, this is a somewhat sensitive topic, given certain events in the world right now. But it is important to be critical without, going off in the weeds and being crazy. There's a fine balance there. What else? So beyond that, you're going to want to work on state awareness, which I defined as aware of your focus, aware of your body, and aware of the environment around you. You're going to be you're going to want to be, I've been saying that a lot today, haven't I? So when you're aware of your focus, that's like a meta awareness. That's the awareness we talk about when we talk about ADA, when we talk about sporadic awareness, those sorts of things. That's being aware that you're paying attention to something. Being aware of your body is presence. That's being aware of yourself and how you relate to the world around you. You can do that so the first one's a little tricky. I will have a drill for that you guys can do as a short soon. So there'll be like a small vid you can follow along with to kind of help you with that. As for awareness of your body, you can tie that you can tie all of these into your usual reality checking. what I mean by that is, instead of just doing a reality check and calling it a day, you're going to be looking at your, you're going to be you're going to be becoming aware of your awareness. You're going to be stepping into this aware state where you are paying attention to your focus and you are knowledgeable of your body. There's other things you can do as far as being aware of your body, such as exercise. That's a very great drill, so long as the exercise is mindful. A really, really good kind of exercise that I recommend for folks is Qigong, which is basically just meditation plus exercise. It kills two birds with one stone, a very efficient way of practicing and running drills for things that are important for lucidity. It also, Qigong is also a great way to be aware of your present environment, because it brings you into the moment through meditation, and it forces you to be aware of your body through movement, and it's great. Look it up. Highly recommend for as far as like drills go. Another thing it does, and another thing that's important for diodes in general, is our grounding exercises. You can look these up. They're basically what we say when we talk about stabilization exercises, but we're trying to change the language to be more like grounding. These are things that are going to allow you to be present in the moment, and not, not allow for any dream destabilization. What else? So I'll get to questions in a second. Let me just get through this section. What you do? So beyond that, another drill that most of you, I think, are doing is journaling. So what that's doing is that's actively working on your working memory. So when you're journaling or delving, that is a drill that's going to be helping you improve your recall and your working memory, which is going to be very important for not only review, but also for just recognizing that you're in a dream in the first place, and remembering your intent to realize that you're in a dream. All right. So questions before we go on to rehearsal for dialed. So I play games asked, also for mnemonic devices, how could I notice them in an actual? I'm not sure what you mean. Mnemonic devices is a very broad thing. Usually they're being used to train memory to do something at a later time. That's just kind of inherently what they do. That's why you're using them, to remember to become aware in a dream, because that is what they do. Someone asked about sporadic awareness. So sporadic awareness was an idea that Puffin popularized on Dream Views way back in the day. Not like way back in the day, but like way back in the day. Like 2010 era-ish. But she basically adapted the idea of all-day awareness, but instead of being aware at all times during the day, you'd only need to make yourself aware during certain times of the day at random, basically. So it's not like being aware at all times, always, never stopping. It's instead being aware during very specific instances during the day, usually tied to reality checking times, but can be tied to anything else. I practice it by tying it to when I would normally do like reality checks, that sort of thing. It's a very efficient way to get, your awareness drills in. Qigong is similar to Tai Chi, yes. And you're very welcome, Koi. I'm glad that is working out for you. It was super helpful for me when I first learned about it. I think I can thank Naya for that. Naya turned me on to Qigong in general. But it's great. Definitely recommend to everyone out there who's dealing with, like, you know, things that can be helped by both meditation and exercise, as you know, it's both of those. Oh no, yes, it's an ADA lecture. Ha ha ha, I caught you. But yeah, Qigong is similar to Tai Chi. Highly recommend it as a drill for lucid dreaming stuff. Yeah. So rehearsal. Okay, so here's the fun one. So rehearsal is going to be something you're all familiar with, and that's mild, basically. So one really good example of rehearsal is mild, as kind of LaBerge defines it and as Naya defines it, where you recall a recent dream and you pretend that you became lucid in that dream. So it's a very weak kind of rehearsal. It's definitely not the more traditional kind of rehearsal you'd have for orchestras, where you're literally playing the piece and you should already know it. This is more of a, okay, we're going to pretend, we're going to theory work the thing. So that's a great way to do rehearsal for dialed, is that sort of, okay, I'm going to act as though I have just become lucid in a dream, and kind of realize that everything before has been a dream, and perform my goals accordingly. Because what you're doing there is you're building up schemas for how you're going to act in the situation, which is really important for ensuring that you get what you want out of the experience. Beyond that, any kind of technique you do before sleep, where you're referencing or looking at specific guides and following along, that's also a rehearsal. Like, you can use that time to learn, to get better at something, because you're not really, if you're doing a technique right before sleep and not during wake back to bed, I don't think you're taking it quite as seriously as you could, which is fine. Again, it relates to your goals. But the real performance is usually done with wake back to bed for best results. So you're typically going to want to be doing rehearsals. I keep saying that. You're going to want to be doing. Okay, you typically do rehearsals when you feel that you are ready to perform. You don't have to, but it's usually best to be in a position where you're confident and comfortable kind of going through the steps and keeping an eye out for not only what you're doing, but like what you could be doing, if that makes sense. So again, one of the tricky words. Again, one of the tricky things about lucid dreaming is that in order to review, you have to have good recall. But you don't only have to have good recall after the fact. You have to have good recall as you're doing it, which is why it's very important to have good working memory, so that you can say, okay, I just did this thing very recently. Like, okay, so we're in deal. I was going to use a wild example. I'm not allowed to use a wild example yet. Rip. What's a good dialed example? I'll use a wild one. So let's say that you're doing a wild attempt, right? And you are, and now I'm thinking, like, I don't want to encourage you guys to be doing this wild before bed. So we're going to skip this, because you shouldn't be doing wild before bed. Even though it is like decent rehearsal, I prefer you to do it after a wake back to bed. There are better ways to rehearse wild than to do it before bed, and we will go over that at the end. And I'll also go over some examples of what you can do to rehearse there as well. Which do. So I think we've covered all that. we can move on to performance. I think we were on performance, right? No, we were slowly working towards it. There's a lot of overlap between rehearsal and performance, because a rehearsal is basically just a performance where you're fixing things up. But a performance is where you're going to be putting your full effort into the attempt, which is why I highly recommend that you can consider doing wake back to bed for all of your performances. Typically, you aren't going to be referencing any material. So if you've been like looking at guides and stuff, like right before you go and do your technique to make sure you've got everything right, that's not a performance. That's a rehearsal, because you are not entirely confident enough in your ability to just do the thing. Once you can do it without needing to look anything up, then that's a performance. That's the result of your practice. That's the result of all the drills you've done, that kind of thing. So when you're performing for lucid dreaming, that's literally just doing the technique during wake back to bed, whether that be a mild SSILD. I don't know how to actually pronounce that phonetically. Siled. Weird. But yeah. Do we have any questions about those specifically? I'll answer some questions. How to make your lucid dreams longer. That's not going to be covered today, but basically work on grounding. Like if you work on grounding, that's one way to address that issue. If you get good at grounding and you incorporate grounding into your rehearsals, specifically the rehearsals where you pretend that you were lucid in a previous dream, that's going to help a bunch. As for dialed or dealed or dealed, it's so similar to dilled. You can literally just, wake up, get good at waking up. So set a goal, essentially, to recognize all of your nightly awakenings, and then set a goal to do a dealed during all of your nightly awakening. And that's how you do dealed, or that's how you set it up anyway. Google it. So grounding is very similar to stabilization exercises. There's a lot of resources out there for how to ground. My recommendation is you kind of look at stabilization guides and apply what's in there. Engaging your senses is a big one. Is kind of allowing yourself to be present in the moment. Kind of a Zen state is the one that I most prefer. But that takes time. There's sort of a progression to things. There's a lot of things that are easy to do when you're starting out, and there are a lot of things that build upon other things. Some of the more advanced grounding techniques are going to build upon other skills that you learn by doing other drills. For example, meditation, which we'll go into a bit later for wild, is like a really, really great drill that not only teaches you basic fundamentals for how to wild, but how to do certain grounding techniques as well. Yeah. Done. So do you just stop doing performances at some point? Oh, so you just stop doing rehearsals and move to performances? How does that work? So sometimes you're going to be doing performances and rehearsals on the same night, or you're just going to be doing a bunch of rehearsals where you're refining something, and then you do a performance, which is going to be the thing that you practice. So as you are refining something, basically if you're changing or iterating or improving upon your process, that's going to be a rehearsal. When you're doing a performance, that's something that you are just, you know what you're doing and you're just doing it, if that makes any sense, which I'm sure it doesn't. What's a good way to explain this? So let's say you're doing your rehearsal, which is basically, let's say you're doing your rehearsal. As you're going along, you notice that, I should probably pay attention to my breathing here. Let's say it's a wild attempt. My breathing seems to be getting a little out of hand. It's much faster than it should be if I want to stay relaxed. So you would say, I'll make a note to breathe slower, which is what I should be doing right now because I'm talking way too quickly. Better. Yeah. So that's one idea of what you're doing in rehearsal. But during the actual performance itself, you can make slight adjustments, but you should already know going in what you're doing, and you should stick to what you're doing. You shouldn't be experimenting. You should be specifically doing one thing consistently, and that's it. Do it as many times as it takes from that point. And hope, ideally, your performance is going to net you a lucid dream. If it doesn't, then you need to review it and figure out what went wrong. It could be that you didn't do anything wrong. There are lots of cases in all sorts of skills where you can perform perfectly and still not win. You'll still end up losing. You'll still end up not, scoring well. And it won't be your fault. It'll just be because someone else did better. And in the case of lucid dreams, it's not your fault with your performance. It's simply that your mind, your brain isn't wired in such a way that is going to be conducive for lucid dreams yet. There could be a lot of different factors, whether that just be your diet at the time, the quality of sleep, stress. A lot of outside factors can prevent you from having a lucid dream. That doesn't necessarily mean your performance was bad. The only way that you're going to know whether your performance was bad is by reviewing and seeing if maybe you did something that was off of your game plan, if it didn't quite follow what you were hoping to do or achieve, that sort of thing. So you're asking, how do you know when you're ready for a performance rather than rehearsal? You're never ready for a performance. You just have to do it and hope for the best. So ideally, you're going to feel confident and comfortable in doing whatever it is that you're doing. That doesn't always happen. Sometimes you just have to bite the bullet and do it. But that's what rehearsals are for. Rehearsals are supposed to get you comfortable enough so that you can perform with sorry, there's like a burp coming. Excuse me. Hey. Performances, what was I saying? Oh, right. Know you're ready when blah, 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 blah. And then right. So rehearsals are trying to get you to a point where you're able to do your performance without really needing to stop and kind of readjust things. And it's basically a measuring. Don't think of performances as like pass fail. Think of them more as like a way to measure your progress so far. If that makes sense, which hopefully it does more than the last one did. So where were we in general? So we were just talking about rehearsals and performances, and now review. I think review is probably where people tend to have the most trouble, at least from what I've seen. One of the biggest things, and we went over this earlier, is having really, really good recall and memory, both long-term and working, because you're going to need to be able to keep track of what you were doing wrong during the dialed attempt. So like if you're doing mild as an example, then maybe all you did was say a mantra. Very common example. That's not great. You can also kind of look back to see how much you did that mantra, whether there was actually intent behind it or you were just repeating a phrase. So those are important things to look for. You want to be looking for your mindset, kind of what you were thinking, your intent, and figure out whether or not what you did was conducive or not to your performance. Does that make sense to everybody? As far as review? I think there was something I was going to talk about regarding review. Could someone remind me of that? Here I am talking about having good memory. I can't remember 10, 20 minutes ago. I remember that I said I would, but I can't remember what it was about. Okay, that's fine. We will move on from here. Let's go over wild, I guess, which is, I should have more better and concrete examples for. They're pretty varied in the different kinds of performances you can do, or technique rather. I'm just kind of using the same terminology, but wilds are like much more straightforward. There's like a couple of ones that are, you know, well, there's one that's fairly popular right now, and then a few that are like a little, we won't get it. Oh yes, dream signs, right? Yes. Thank you very much. Okay, so for reviewing, yes, okay, that reminds me. Yep, we want to be going over a few different ways that you can review things, so you're not always going to necessarily be reviewing your performance. You're also going to be reviewing your rehearsal and your drills, and part of that is just dreams in general. So while you're journaling, you can review your journals and pick out various dream signs. So yeah, in that sense, looking at dream signs by reviewing your journals is very much part of the process. I'm hoping that you guys can start to see how a lot of the things we've been teaching you guys and the things that you've been learning sort of fit into this framework for improvement, which is used like across the board for like everything. But yeah, you'll start to see that like all of these things kind of fit together in like this one system and framework for improvement. And if you're able to identify where and how these things fit together, you can then use that to kind of improve upon your own, your own practice, your own improvement. But let's go on to wilds. We don't have a ton of time left, but I won't rush, but so for wilds, again, just like with guilds and everything else, you want to make your goal achievable. If you've already had a bunch of wilds, then sorry, there's something. Okay, I think we're okay. I think everything's fine. So you want to keep your goals achievable. What that means is, if you've already had a bunch of wilds, then you kind of want to get your consistency up. So you want to be saying, okay, so I've had a bunch of wilds, but I can't get things consistent well, I can't get things to the point where, well, I've had a bunch of wilds, but I'm not having wilds as often as I'd like or whenever I'd like. So what you would do is you would keep better track of what you're doing, make slight adjustments that you think will help, and kind of go from there. This is the same kind of, this is the process that I use with everyone that comes to me with like wild advice. I'm going to ask them, or sometimes it's like pulling teeth, but we're going to try to get to the root of why you're having this issue by getting you to review your most recent attempts to see what you were doing right or what you were doing wrong. and kind of making tweaks and working from there. But yeah, that's a reasonable goal if you're already pretty good at wild. If you're not, just getting your first is like a great goal. And even beyond that, just like recognizing what happens when you fall asleep is another goal that you kind of like shoot towards. As for drills for wild, there's a whole bunch, but we're going to go over 3 that I think are very useful and that you should probably start doing if you want to get better at this. Some of these have applications and uses beyond just wild. Some of them have applications for grounding, for dream control, that sort of thing. So the first one is meditation. So meditation is going to teach you the balance and the Zen state necessary to allow yourself to slip into sleep, basically, while still being aware and conscious. It also kind of works as like a starting point for how to do more advanced grounding, and also for how to use scan, is something I'll be talking about in, let's not talk. I'm so ashamed. I haven't done any work on the Dream Control Part 2 guide. Okay, that's all right. That's a problem for another music for another time. Right now, we are talking about wild and how to get better at that. Not my feelings as the content. So we talked about meditation, yeah, and why that's important. Another important drill is relaxation. So when you're doing relaxation in wild, your goal is to prepare your body for sleep, to get it into a state where it can more easily fall asleep. What you can do to drill that is just work on relaxing yourself before bed, or that's usually the best way. That's what I do. I wouldn't really recommend doing it just to do it, although you can if you want to. Getting good at different breathing exercises to help with relaxation helps. Learning how to reduce anxiety with just your breath is a great way to kind of get good at relaxation. There are various relaxation techniques you can use, such as progressive relaxation, which can assist in, taking you from a tense state, very loose and relaxed one. These are all great exercises that you can not only use during your wild attempt itself, but kind of as an additional a way to build the skills necessary for wild. The last one, and this one is going to be probably something none of you all have really heard in this context before, hypnosis. So if you get good at going into a trance state, you're going to become very good at figuring out the balance necessary for wild. And what I mean by that is by learning how to go into trance, and not self-hypnosis, but rather having someone hypnotize you or use a file or something like that. By learning that, you learn how to be submissive, basically. Wild is a very, very submissive activity, which is slightly ironic, but basically you don't want to be doing anything for wild. You kind of want to let it happen. The only thing you're doing is like very, very passive. And the same kind of concept applies to hypnosis, because what you're doing in hypnosis is you are being in a submissive state while passively engaging in an activity, in this case listening. Wild is much the same way. You are trying to be very submissive, allowing sleep to happen without interfering, and at the same time passively listening or engaging with your anchor in some way. So they both have a lot of overlap and commonality. So if you can get good at hypnosis, which is something you can practice at any time, using like various, stuff on YouTube. There's a lot of good stuff on there for like relaxation, kill two birds with one stone if you go that direction, that sort of thing. But yeah. Do we have any questions about those stuff before we go on to rehearsal? Rehearsal's a quick one. We can just go on to rehearsal. So with Wild, I highly, highly recommend that you do your rehearsals during naps. The reason for that is because you are going to be much more aware and alert if it's like during the middle of the day than you would otherwise. It's the same idea with Dialed. You want to be doing your rehearsal before bed, specifically because you're going to be more aware and alert and able to make better decisions in the moment. The same idea goes for Wild. You can make better adjustments in the moment if needed, if you're doing it during a nap versus during a wake back to bed where you might be groggy or not aware and might do things kind of lazily. That's really why I want you to be doing your rehearsals for Dialed, and that's really why I want you to be doing your rehearsals for Dialed before you go to sleep, and then doing your performances during wake back to bed, because during wake back to bed you're not necessarily going to be all there. So you're going to be very much relying on everything that you've drilled in, everything you've practiced in order to get you to get you lucid. The same is true for Wild. If you are doing all of your rehearsals during wake back to bed, well, then you aren't necessarily going to be having as good a time at reviewing things or as good a time at adapting as needed or trying out new things as you would if you did it during a nap where you have much more coherency. That makes sense. Which it should. That one should make sense. I did a good job with that. Good job, Mizik. Thank you, Mizik. So cringe. All right, let's see. Yep. So for performance, we just touched on that. It's the same kind of idea. You want to be doing that during wake back to bed. So ideally, when you're doing a Wild, you're going to be doing it with the benefit of all of the drills that you've already worked on. You're going to be doing it with the benefit of all of the rehearsals you've done during naps. This is going to be when you have the optimal conditions to actually succeed at Wild. And it's going to be the time where you're also going to have the optimal conditions to fail at Wild. So if you've got all of your drills on point, if you've got all of your rehearsals down, then you can just do it without having to think about it, without having to worry about it. Just go and do it and enjoy it. Yeah, that's kind of the point of this whole thing. If you get to the point, did I just say point twice? Whatever. That's kind of the point of this whole thing. I'm trying to get you guys to where you can do a technique without even thinking about it. And the way you do that is by practicing all of the parts of the technique, so that it's just kind of natural and it just sort of happens. You can just kind of enjoy it. As for review for Wild, I mean, we've kind of beat the horse dead at this point, but it's the same idea. You're going to be wanting to. Oh, I did say I was going to talk about a specific review thing for Wild. But yeah, it is the same idea. You're going to be wanting to remember what you've done as you're doing it, and then later as well. And you're going to want to be looking for anything that was off from what you did during drills or what you did during rehearsal. And kind of identifying that as a problem point so that if it pops up during any rehearsals or any drills, you can make note of it and kind of adjust your behavior such that when you actually go to do the performance again, it just sort of comes naturally. Then there was a specific example I wanted to go over. What was it? I don't remember it offhand. I think it was regarding, I guess I'll open the floor for questions at this point. Like, try to look over my notes and see if it's in here somewhere. I don't see anything. I'm just gonna assume everything's good. Yep, bug milk. That's a great point. That is a very good point. There are definitely going to be things to look for that are kind of outside just doing a technique, just doing, drills or rehearsal. If there are elements that you can control that are going to improve your sleep and your chances at doing something, you can kind of include that as part of your review and part of your practice in general. Like, one of the things that I do personally for review for both dialed and wild is I keep very extensive notes. I keep track of when I went to bed, when I woke up, how long the wild was. So I'll look at the clock before I start and after to get a sense of how long of the time I spent in dream and how long I actually spent doing the wild attempt. I will make notes about my mental state. I will make notes about everything I can think of, basically. And then I'll use these notes, which I'll write up like in the morning alongside, my journal stuff, to kind of like improve upon, to kind of like iterate and improve upon things where I'm either lacking, or if things went well, I'll identify what I did that night and compare it to other nights where I did things well and kind of see what lines up. That is a great question, Crimson. Let me know if you find the answer to that. I've been going to bed at like 5 a.m. lately, like 3 a.m. It's not been good. I'm starting to, try to get things back on track with just using melatonin, which is not something I can recommend, I guess. Talk with your doctor, but it's been okay for me so far. Trying to reset my cycle. But yeah. Have I experimented with hypnosis and wild? I have. I don't like to use hypnosis and wild. Self-hypnosis, I feel like you can use self-hypnosis to kind of get as a replacement for relaxation. I don't typically enjoy doing guided sort of stuff with wild. I find that the voice carries over into the dream, and I'm not a huge fan of that. A little bit annoying. But as far as like self-hypnosis sort of stuff goes, yeah, you can use it to kind of set a sentinel of intent, as I used to call it, which is similar to something that I guess Sensei's been teaching, where you set some intent using various hypnosis techniques to make yourself aware of the moment in which you pass into a dream state. This way you can kind of drift off and completely lose consciousness. Don't have to worry about N3 sleep being like super deep. Just as you pop up back into N2 sleep and then REM, become aware in that moment and just use that to become. Just as an example. But yeah, if you guys want like very specific examples or information, like ask questions. I have so much going on up here that it's like hard to pinpoint exact things unless I'm able to focus in on one thing. If not, then I think we can probably call it there. I hope this was useful. If not, let me know. If it was, consider maybe subscribing, yeah, liking the video. Every little bit helps. We're trying to grow this OmniLucid network as big as possible, get lucid dreaming into the lives as many folks as we can. But yeah, hope you all enjoyed. I will see you again next Monday.